My name is Sarah Martinez, and I never thought I'd see my own blood pooling on our kitchen floor over something so stupid. But that elbow to my ribs changed everything. When my mother laughed, I understood this wasn't a family anymore. It was a prison. They thought I'd stay silent forever. They forgot that when a rib breaks, part of the fear inside you dies with it. The morning started like any other in our cramped two-story house in Millbrook, Pennsylvania. I was making coffee, trying to ignore the mess Emily had left from her midnight snacking session. Crumbs everywhere, dishes piled high, empty beer bottles scattered across the counter. At 23, my younger sister still acted like the world existed to clean up after her. "Could you at least rinse your dishes?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. I'd learned long ago that any hint of frustration would trigger her explosive temper. Emily slouched into the kitchen, her bleached hair tangled from sleep. At 21, she had the same sharp features as our mother, but none of the work ethic that had once made Mom successful before Dad left. "God, Sarah, it's 8 in the morning. Can you not? I'm just asking you to clean up after yourself." She rolled her eyes, grabbing the orange juice straight from the carton. Another pet peeve I'd given up fighting. "You're such a control freak. No wonder Marcus dumped you." The mention of my ex stung more than I wanted to admit, especially since Emily had been the one texting him behind my back, feeding him lies about me cheating with a coworker. By the time I found out, he'd already blocked me on everything. "That's not what we're talking about," I said, turning back to the coffee maker. "Whatever. Mom said you need to give her your half of the rent today. She's short again." I gripped the counter. "I gave her my half last week, and the week before that, I covered your portion too. So she needs it." For what, another spa weekend with her book club? That's when Emily snapped. It happened so fast I barely registered the movement. One moment she was standing by the fridge, the next her elbow connected with my ribs with a sickening crack. Pain exploded through my side as I crashed into the counter, sending dishes flying. The sound of shattering ceramic mixed with my scream. I clutched my side, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Each breath felt like knives sliding between my ribs. "Emily." I wheezed, dropping to my knees. The linoleum was cold against my palms as I fought not to pass out. "You always act so perfect," she hissed, standing over me. "Like you're better than us." Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Mom appeared in the doorway, her silk robe billowing behind her. For a split second, relief flooded through me. She'd help. She'd finally see what Emily had become. "What's all this noise?" Mom surveyed the scene, her gaze moving from the broken dishes to me curled on the floor. She hit me." I managed between shallow breaths. "I think. My rib." Mom's laugh cut through my pain like another blow. Not nervous laughter or shocked disbelief. A genuine, amused chuckle like I'd told a mildly funny joke. "Oh, Sarah, don't be so dramatic. Sisters fight." "Mom, I need hospital." Her expression hardened. "Absolutely not. Do you know what that would mean? They'd ask questions. There'd be a record. It could ruin Emily's future." I stared at her in disbelief. Blood was seeping through my shirt where a dish shard had caught my side. "She broke my rib." "You don't know that. You're being hysterical." Mom stepped carefully around the broken glass to wrap an arm around Emily's shoulders. "Baby, are you okay? Did she provoke you?" Emily immediately switched to victim mode, tears welling in her eyes. "She was screaming at me about money again. You know how she gets." "Mom." "I was just trying to get away and she grabbed me." "I never touched her." Mom shot me a disgusted look. "I saw the way you were standing when I came in, aggressive, confrontational." Emily was defending herself. The room spun as I tried to process the gaslighting happening in real time. This wasn't new, but it had never been this blatant, this cruel. "Don't even think about calling the cops," Mom continued, her voice dropping to a threat. "This family doesn't air its dirty laundry. You'll deal with this quietly, or you'll find somewhere else to live." They left me there on the kitchen floor, stepping over me like I was just another mess to ignore. I heard them in the living room, Mom cooing over Emily, promising to take her shopping to help her feel better after such a traumatic morning. I lay there for 20 minutes, afraid to move, afraid to breathe too deeply. When I finally pulled myself up, I had to use the counter for support. Each movement sent lightning through my torso. The blood on my shirt had dried to rust-colored stains. No insurance. That fact hit me as hard as Emily's elbow had. Mom had kicked me off the family plan the day I turned 18, claiming I needed to learn responsibility. Meanwhile, Emily still enjoyed full coverage at 21. I made it to my room eventually, each stair a mountain to climb. My phone sat on the nightstand, taunting me with possibilities. I could call 911, report the assault. But then what? Mom would kick me out. I made barely enough at my part-time job at the veterinary clinic to cover my half of the expenses here. The rental market in Millbrook was insane. I'd be homeless. So I did what I'd always done. I endured. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of pain and carefully hidden winces. I called in sick to work, knowing Dr. Hendricks would notice something was wrong if I showed up moving like a broken marionette. Emily acted like nothing had happened, breezing past me in the hallways without acknowledgement. Mom maintained her cold silence except when she needed something. "Sarah, I need your credit card," she announced on day 4, barging into my room without knocking. I was lying in bed, trying to find a position that didn't make me want to scream. "What for?" "Groceries." "Use your own card." She scoffed. "It's maxed out. This is for the household. Don't be selfish." Selfish? The word burned almost as much as my ribs. I'd been buying groceries for this house since I was 16 and got my first job. Mom's executive assistant's salary should have been more than enough, but somehow there was never money. Designer bags would appear in her closet while she cried poverty. Emily's car got detailed monthly, while mine limped along with a check engine light that had been on for 2 years. "I'll transfer you 100, I said, too exhausted to fight. 200, prices have gone up. She left with my debit card anyway, returning hours later with 1 bag of actual groceries and several shopping bags from Nordstrom. I didn't say anything. What was the point? That night, unable to sleep from the pain, I started documenting. My phone became my lifeline as I took photos of the bruising spreading across my torso like purple storm clouds, the cut from the dish, the way my ribcage looked slightly wrong, one side not matching the other. Then I started recording. Mom and Emily were in the living room, voices carrying clearly up the stairs. I hit record on my phone, barely breathing as I captured their conversation. "She's being such a baby about it," Emily whined. "It wasn't even that hard." "I know, sweetheart. Sarah's always been too sensitive. Remember when you accidentally broke her laptop in high school? Such a fuss over nothing." "That wasn't an accident," Emily laughed. "She wouldn't let me borrow it for my paper, so I knocked it off the table. Oops." "Well, she shouldn't have been so stingy. Family shares." My hands shook as I saved the recording. Evidence. Finally. Some evidence of what my life had been like for years. The casual cruelty, the rewritten history, the constant gaslighting that made me question my own memories. Over the next week, I became obsessed with documentation. Every receipt showing Mom's spending on luxury items while claiming poverty, screenshots of text messages where she demanded money, photos of Emily's social media, bragging about expensive concerts and trips funded by the bank of Mom and Sarah. The turning point came when I overheard Emily on the phone with her friend Jessica. "Yeah, the interview is next week. Preston Marketing. It's like my dream job. Mom knows someone who knows someone, so it's basically guaranteed." Preston Marketing. I knew that company. They were notorious for thorough background checks and taking their corporate culture seriously. Family values, integrity, trust. Their website proclaimed in bold letters. An idea began forming. Terrible, delicious, necessary. That night, I waited until the house was asleep before creeping into Emily's room. Her laptop sat open on her desk, logged into everything because she was too lazy to use passwords. I photographed her browser history, including some interesting searches about how to lie on employment forms and what shows up on background checks. Then I found the goldmine, her application to Preston Marketing. Under the section about criminal history, she'd checked no. Under references, she'd listed professors from classes she'd failed or dropped out of. Her resume claimed a 3.8 GPA when transcripts in her email showed barely a 2.3. But it was the personal statement that sealed her fate. She'd written about her strong family values, her commitment to honesty, and how she'd overcome adversity through hard work and determination. What a joke. I forwarded everything to myself, then crept back to my room. My ribs protested every movement, but adrenaline masked the pain. For the first time in years, I felt something other than trapped. The next morning, I created a new email account, professional, untraceable to me. Then I began crafting my message to Preston Marketing's HR department. Dear hiring team, I feel morally obligated to share some concerning information about Emily Martinez, who I understand is interviewing for a position with your company. As someone who values the integrity that Preston Marketing represents, I cannot stand by while someone who engages in domestic violence and fraud attempts to join your organization. I attached everything. The photos of my injuries with timestamps, the audio recording of Mom and Emily laughing about the assault, screenshots of Emily's social media posts bragging about lying to employers, her falsified application materials. But I wasn't done. I included a recording I'd made just that morning when Mom had again threatened to evict me if I sought medical care. Remember, Sarah? Her voice crackled through my phone speaker. If you tell anyone about your little accident, you're out. I won't have Emily's future ruined because you can't take a joke. Family protects family. Or they're not family anymore. I hit send. Then I waited. 3 days before Emily's interview, I heard her phone ringing incessantly. She ignored the first few calls, but by the 5th, she answered with her fake professional voice. Hello, yes, this is Emily Martinez. What I don't understand, canceled, but I have an interview scheduled. I stood in my doorway, watching her pace the hallway. Her face went from confused to panicked to enraged in the span of 30 seconds. Anonymous complaint. That's ridiculous. What kind of... No. I demand to know what was said. This is slander. I'll sue. She threw her phone against the wall, cracking the screen. Mom rushed upstairs at the commotion. Baby, what's wrong? They canceled my interview. Some psycho sent them lies about me. Emily's face was red, tears streaming. They said they can't consider me for any position, now or in the future. Mom's eyes found mine across the hallway. The suspicion there was sharp enough to cut. Sarah, did you do something? I shrugged, letting a small smile play at my lips. I've been in bed with a broken rib. Remember, how could I do anything? But the seed was planted. Over the next few days, the house became a war zone. Emily applied to other companies, only to find that word had somehow spread. Preston Marketing had connections everywhere, and they took threats to their corporate culture seriously. No one wanted to risk hiring someone with documented violence and fraud in their background. Mom's fury grew with each of Emily's rejections. She stopped pretending to be civil, openly discussing plans to force me out. What they didn't know was that I'd been doing my own research. Grandpa's will. I'd always wondered why Mom insisted on handling all the house paperwork, why my name was never on anything, despite paying half of everything. So I'd done some digging at the county records office. The house was mine. Grandpa had left it to me specifically, not to Mom. She'd been living here as my guardian when I was a minor. But the deed was clear. Sarah Elenia Martinez, sole owner upon reaching age 25. My birthday was in 2 months. Mom had hidden this from me for years, collecting my rent for a house I already owned. I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer, paying the consultation fee with money I'd scraped together by skipping lunches. Mr. Davidson was a sharp-eyed older man who listened to my story with increasing indignation. This is fraud, he said simply. Your mother has been collecting rent from you for a property you own. That's illegal. And given the documented abuse, you have grounds for immediate eviction. How immediate? With proper notice 30 days, with evidence of domestic violence and financial fraud, we can file for an emergency order. They could be out within a week. I signed the papers with a hand that barely shook. The process server came on a Tuesday. I watched from my bedroom window as Mom answered the door, her confident posture crumbling as she read the documents. Her scream of rage rattled the windows. "Sarah." I descended the stairs slowly, each step measured. She stood in the foyer, clutching the eviction notice like it might burst into flames. "What is this?" she hissed. "It's pretty self-explanatory. You have 7 days to vacate my property." "Your property? This is my house." "No, it's Grandpa's house, which he left to me, which you've been hiding while stealing rent money for 5 years. Emily appeared from the kitchen, mouth full of chips. "What's going on?" "Your sister is trying to throw us out." Emily laughed. "She can't do that. She's nobody. She's nothing." I pulled out my phone, showing them the deed on the screen. "Lancaster County says different. Oh, and Mom. My lawyer says I can sue for back rent. 5 years at $800 a month. That's $48,000, plus damages for the financial fraud. And Emily, assault charges don't have a statute of limitations." The silence was beautiful. For once, neither of them had a quick retort or manipulation ready. "You can't," Mom whispered. "We're family." "No," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. "Family protects family. Remember, you two protected each other. I'm protecting myself." The next 7 days were hell. They tried everything: tears, threats, guilt trips about how I was ruining their lives. Mom even tried to seduce my lawyer, which backfired spectacularly when he added harassment to the legal documentation. Emily's attempts to find housing were hampered by her newly destroyed reputation. Landlords ran basic Google searches these days, and her name was now linked to the Preston marketing scandal. Someone definitely not me had made sure the story spread to relevant forums and professional networks. Mom discovered that her credit was too shot to qualify for most rentals, and her friends from the book club suddenly weren't returning her calls. Amazing how fair weather those relationships were when she actually needed help. On eviction day, I stood on my porch as they loaded their things into a rented truck. Mom had aged 10 years in a week, her usually perfect appearance haggard. Emily looked smaller somehow, deflated without her bubble of enablement. "I hope you're happy," Mom spat as she passed. "You've destroyed your own family." "No," I replied. "I survived it." They drove away, and I went inside my house. My house. I walked through rooms that suddenly felt bigger, brighter. The kitchen where I'd bled on the floor became the place I cooked my first meal in peace. Emily's room, with its chaos and entitlement, transformed into a sunlit art studio where I could finally pursue painting without ridicule. I kept tabs on them, of course. Mom moved in with her sister 2 towns over, spinning stories about her ungrateful daughter. But Aunt Carol had always been sharper than Mom gave her credit for. The story fell apart quickly when Carol called me directly for my version. Emily bounced between friends' couches for months. Her social media went from bragging about designer goods to vague posts about fake friends and betrayal. Last I heard, she was working retail at a mall 40 miles away, still blaming everyone but herself for her situation. The rib healed crooked on cold mornings. I felt it. A physical reminder of the day everything changed. But I didn't regret it. That pain had freed me in ways I never imagined possible. I enrolled in community college with the money I saved from not supporting 2 parasites. My grades were excellent when I wasn't constantly stressed about survival. Dr. Hendricks promoted me to full-time at the clinic and wrote me a glowing recommendation for veterinary school. 6 months after the eviction, I got a text from an unknown number. The area code was from 2 states away. "Sarah, it's me. I know you hate me, but I need help. Emily won't change. She's getting worse. I can't enable her anymore, but I don't know how to stop. How did you do it? How did you get free?" I stared at the message for a long time. Mom had never admitted fault before, never acknowledged the toxicity she'd created and maintained. I could have ignored it, could have blocked the number and continued my peaceful life. But something made me type back. The first step is admitting there's a problem. It sounds like you just did that. Call me when you're ready for step 2. My phone rang within minutes. Mom's voice was different, smaller, uncertain. "I'm sorry," she said, and for the first time, it sounded real. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I said, "but sorry isn't enough anymore." "What is?" "Change, real change, therapy, accountability, and accepting that Emily is an adult who needs to face consequences. She hit her roommate last week, got arrested. She called me to bail her out. And I didn't." Mom's voice broke. "I couldn't keep enabling her. You were right. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was a start." Mom began therapy, finally addressing the narcissistic patterns she'd learned from her own mother. She sent me letters, not asking for anything, just updating me on her progress. Emily, meanwhile, spiraled. Without Mom's protection or my resources to leech from, she had to face herself. Multiple arrests. Fired from job after job. The last update I got from a mutual acquaintance said she was in court-ordered therapy after her 3rd assault charge. I graduated veterinary school with honors. Dr. Hendricks retired and sold me the clinic at a price that made him smile and say, "You've earned this." My house became a haven for friends who needed to escape their own toxic families. I understood their pain in ways others couldn't. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I'd sit in my art studio and paint. Abstract pieces mostly, full of dark purples and sharp reds that gradually gave way to softer blues and greens. Visitors often commented on how the paintings seemed to tell a story of transformation. They weren't wrong. The broken rib had healed crooked, but I stood straighter than ever. The scars on my side had faded to silver lines, barely visible. But the invisible scars, the ones years of gaslighting and manipulation had left, those took longer to heal. I dated cautiously, having learned to spot red flags from miles away. When I finally met James, a soft-spoken teacher who respected boundaries and communicated honestly, it felt like breathing clean air after years of smoke. "Your family sounds intense," he said after I'd shared an abbreviated version of my story. They were, but they taught me something valuable. "What's that?" "That real family isn't about blood. It's about choice. And choosing to protect someone who hurts you isn't love. It's enabling." Mom and I developed a careful relationship. Lunches once a month, always in public. She showed me photos from her therapy journal. Pages of reflection and accountability. It wasn't enough to erase the past, but it was enough to build something new. Something healthier. Emily remained a ghost. Her social media went dark after the last arrest. Mom heard through the grapevine that she'd moved across the country, burning bridges everywhere she went. Part of me hoped she'd find her rock bottom and start climbing up. Most of me was just grateful for the distance. On the 5th anniversary of the kitchen incident, I hosted a dinner party. My house was full of chosen family. Friends who'd supported me through veterinary school, colleagues who'd become confidants. James, who'd proposed the week before in the art studio, surrounded by paintings that told our story. "A toast," I said, raising my glass, "to broken ribs and broken cycles." They laughed, not fully understanding but supporting me anyway. That's what real family did. Later that night, as guests mingled and music played, I stepped onto the back porch, the same porch where I'd stood watching Mom and Emily drive away years ago. But everything was different now. The garden bloomed with plants I'd chosen. The walls held art I'd created. The life I lived was entirely my own. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize, though something about it seemed familiar. "Saw your engagement announcement online. Congratulations. You look happy. E." I stared at it for a long moment. Then, without responding, I deleted it and blocked the number. Some bridges were meant to stay burned. Inside, James was laughing at something Dr. Hendricks had said. My chosen mother figure, Mrs. Chen from next door, was teaching her secret dumpling recipe to eager friends. The house hummed with warmth and genuine affection. I touched my side where the crooked rib lived under skin and muscle. It rarely hurt anymore. When it did, I remembered it as the price of freedom, the cost of breaking generational cycles, the moment I chose myself over toxic loyalty. Worth every penny, worth every pain. The girl who'd lain bleeding on the kitchen floor would barely recognize the woman standing on this porch. Good. That girl needed to die for this woman to live. I went back inside to my real family. The ones who chose me. The ones I chose back. The ones who would never ask me to bleed for them, literally or figuratively. The house was mine. The life was mine. The future, finally, was mine. And I'd earned every beautiful, broken, rebuilt piece of it.